Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to my review of the latest release by Straton, the Straton Curve Mark II. Now this is a very special release from the brand because the Curve was the watch that launched the brand nearly 10 years ago. It was also the first Straton that I reviewed on the channel back in early 2018. There you go, you can still find the Kickstarter campaign in their archives, nearly 500 backers, which was a huge number back then when the micro scene was much smaller than it is today. Indeed, having brands like Zelos and Straton launch these anniversary models, celebrating a decade in business, shows just how mature the micro brand space is in 2025. Now you saw the pop-up? This video is sponsored by Straton. I will therefore, of course, leave a link to the landing page for the Curve 2 on their website in the description of the video. The watches themselves go on sale in a day or two's time, so there's a countdown timer on the site if you want to set an alarm. 4 different colours are available, there's 2 different movement choices, but there are only 50 pieces of each of the 8 permutations available. And I gotta say, Straton's press shots for these are pretty cool, with the watches and some sexy smoke in the foreground and some even sexier cars in the background. Kyle, the brand owner of Straton and Signum watches, has sent me a couple of prototypes to have a look at. One with a Seiko Mecha Quartz movement and one with a Seiko automatic chronograph movement. Straton was the first brand that I came across anyway who did this, who offered the same watch at 2 different price points with 2 different movement options. It really does make a lot of sense when you think about it. Some people prefer quartz, some people prefer mechanical, some people prefer spending less money, some people prefer spending more money, so why not? I guess that segues neatly into price, doesn't it? The Seiko Mecha Quartz versions are $399 US, the Seiko automatic versions featuring an NE86 movement are $799. These prices obviously do not take into account your local taxes and tariffs, so do bear that in mind. Now the mechanicals may be twice the price of the quartz, but I think that's where the value lies today. $799 is as cheap as I have ever seen for a watch containing a Seiko NE80 something. Alright, dimensions and specifications. I'm going to do this twice today, but I'm going to do this quickly today. I'm going to do it once for the Mecha Quartz on the leather strap and once for the automatic on the bracelet. Those are the kind of 2 extremes, the 2 ends of the scale in terms of size. And my figures don't match Straton's figures on these, so it would seem that one of us needs to buy a new set of calipers. So the Mecha Quartz is 42mm in diameter, it is 13.3mm thick with a lug-to-lug of 49.5. 22 mils between the lugs, and on the leather strap the Mecha Quartz weighs 97 grams. On the bracelet it weighs a maximum of 174 grams with all links included. Water resistance is 100 meters, crystal is domed sapphire with AR coating, and we know by now it's a Seiko Mecha Quartz, it's the VK64. Let's look at the auto then. It's the same 42mm in diameter, but it is necessarily thicker, coming in at 15.3mm. Lug to lug is unchanged at 49.5, it's 22 between the lugs again. Now, the weight. On leather it weighs in at 120 grams and on bracelet at 199 grams. So the NE86 adds 2mm of thickness and approximately 25 grams of weight to the equation. This is the first time I've seen an NE86, but I suspect that more and more micros are going to start using these. It's a 34 joule 4Hz column wheel automatic with bi-directional winding and a 45-hour power reserve. It's a really solid option and definitely more affordable than a Sellita SW500 for example. If not quite as accurate at -15 to +25 seconds per day variance from the factory. I do hope you took all that in. Let's move on to the case finish. Case finish is simple but effective. There is a radially brushed top surface, big high polished flanks, then vertically brushed sides. And really, it's that radial brushing on the upper surface that sets this whole thing off. The 6.7mm crown is screwed down and signed with the Straton S logo, and the two chronograph pushers are high polish. Now there is a nice touch on the case back, which is screwed down and made of stainless steel. There's the usual spec sheet around the outer edge in Straton's stylized 1970s font, but it's the pattern in the centre we're more interested in. That pattern is a classic wire wheel, as featured on Kyle's own race-prepared vintage Alfa Romeo GTV. Why not? The bracelet is a classic 1970s roll ball style. If you are a fan of the brand, you'll have seen this one before, supplied with previous models. It's nicely done, it's all brushed upper surfaces, very smooth to the touch, it's got those high polished sides, screw links hold it together, and it has quick release end links. They are straight cut end links though, which are never quite as nice as custom fitted end links that properly match the watch, or at least they're not as nice to my mind anyway. The clasp on this one is pretty basic. It has 6 holes of micro adjustment and a branded fold over, double security pushers, pressed upper, milled scissor. Now, as far as I know, do check the website, the leather straps are an optional extra. They've been selling these same straps on Stratons for as long as there have been Stratons. It's a perforated rally style, it's nice and thick, it's nice and comfortable. The strap itself isn't branded, but the all brushed hardware most certainly is. Dial in hands then, and once again I'll split it between the two different movements because there are a couple of visual differences caused by the two different movements. If you haven't seen a VK64 Mecha Quartz by Seiko before, they can be slightly disconcerting at first because there is no ticking seconds hand. Instead, you have a date complication at 6, a 60-minute chrono timer at 9, and arguably the world's most useless complication at 3, a 24-hour indicator. Now, I have the central chronograph hand running here, which can be used in lieu of a seconds hand, but only for an hour, because once the 64 counts to 60 minutes, it stops. I have always loved Kyle's brown dials, though he calls this one a mustard dial because there's a bit of yellow in it. So 1970s and therefore so appropriate. There's a very, very light granular texture to the centre section with a notable fade towards a darker shade of brown at the edges of the dial. Our markers are applied, they're high polished silver, as is the frame around the date complication. There is a printed minute track and then a rather attractive tachymeter scale split into thirds with a different colour for each third, and then a further set of printed markers on an angled chapter ring. Those markers include Arabics on the 5s and dash marks on the 2.5s. I'm not sure exactly how useful those are going to be then. The hour and minute hand are simple tapered sword style with loom, and it's a colour matched central chronograph hand with a fairly sizable counterbalance. I've always enjoyed Straton's minimalist approach to dial text and branding. Just the S above the pinion and the model name beneath it. You see people try and stuff multiple lines of text and information onto the dial of a chronograph, and it just doesn't work. Moving on to the automatic version then, and the Miami colourway that is actually far more 80s retro than 70s retro. The NE86, as featured here, is a 30-minute chronograph, unlike the NE88, which has a third sub-register at the 6, measuring up to 12 hours. There is a small seconds indicator at the 3, and again, the frame date complication at the 6. The date wheel on this one does seem to be a little bit shiny, which is quite unusual, but also quite nice. The auto also features a tachymeter split into thirds. In this Miami version, the same 3 colours are used to split up the 30-minute chrono register into thirds. As I said, there are only 50 pieces in Mecha Quartz and 50 pieces in auto. I reckon these Miami ones will be the first to go. Alright then, let's get these bad boys on wrist, and once again I'll split it into 2, Mecha Quartz on leather and auto on bracelet. Now there's a big difference in weight between those two options, but there are similarities as well. You're not going to forget you're wearing a watch with this one, are you? This thing has a ton of wrist presence. That's going to suit some people, but maybe it's going to be a little bit too much metal on your wrist for some others. Now it's a fairly chunky watch, so the handset is a reasonable size, but they do sometimes get lost against the similarly coloured chronograph sub-register dials, at least on this mustard coloured version anyway. It is a nice piece of crystal though, a little bit of flecto, a little bit of light play from it, but not too much. Moving on to the Miami, as sized for me, this one comes in at just under 200 grams. Again, you're not going to forget you're wearing a watch if you're wearing one of these. And if the weight doesn't do it, then the pink and blue colorway certainly will. Definitely a lot more legibility from this Miami color version as well though, thanks to the white hands against the black dial. They really do pop far more than they did on the other version. So do bear that in mind if legibility is a concern for you. It may be big on the bracelet, but it is comfy enough, and with 6 micro adjust holes, you're bound to get a decent fit on the bracelet. Moans and Niggles, well, as you just saw, it's a big watch that wears like a big watch. The Mecha Quartz is obviously both slimmer and lighter than the Auto, and therefore more wearable than the Auto. Leather strap similarly lighter and more wearable than the bracelet. You've got an effective weight range of 100 grams, so 100 grams for the lightest version on leather, 200 grams for the heaviest version on the bracelet. The lightest configuration doesn't wear heavy, but it looks big. The heaviest configuration, yeah, it does wear heavy and it looks big. Now, I haven't shown you the loom video yet, which is never a good sign. Not for the first time with a Straton review. I felt they could have done with a couple more layers of loom on the hands and on the indices. This watch has a screw down crown, it's got 100 meters of water resistance, it's a good piece of crystal. It opens up the possibility of it being a proper all-rounder, but poor loom does dent that capability somewhat. And I said exactly the same thing when I reviewed the Mark I version of this watch 8 years ago. And the clasp. Honestly, I would love to find out in what proportion of my videos I complain about the clasp. This one just does not feel like it belongs on an $800 US watch. Indeed, here is my $65 Steel Dive 1970, and the clasp does look rather familiar, shall we say. In fact, I gotta say, the clasp on the Steel Dive feels nicer than the one on the Straton. The Straton one just doesn't feel nice in hand. There are a couple of sharp edges here and there, and it doesn't have on-the-fly adjustment, which is a big miss at the price. I really think that Straton should have spec'd something a little bit more salubrious than this. And while I'm here, the strap is nice, but it doesn't have quick release spring bars. So if you do option on one of these with the roll ball bracelet, it's not going to be an entirely tool-free experience swapping back and forth. Now, I'm not saying that Kyle has to listen to everything I say, but there doesn't feel like there's been a lot of progression between the Curve and Curve 2. In fact, the Curve 1 had a second crown and a movable rotating inner chapter ring which acted as a pseudo GMT function, allowing you to track a second time zone. There's an argument therefore that the Curve 2 has actually gone backwards rather than forwards. I think the value is pretty good on these though. 400 for a Mecha Quartz, 800 for a Seiko NE80 something is actually really good. But obviously, you have to be on board with this 1970s racing chronograph styling to begin with. Straton have been around now for 10 years, but they have been ploughing a very narrow furrow for that decade. I have reviewed a number of their watches on the channel over those years, and there has been a distinct look to all of them. If you like 1970s racing chronographs and the occasional three-hander, you've just found the perfect brand for you. If you don't, then the Curve 2 might leave you cold, and there is little else in their catalogue to warm you up. So very much a niche offering then. Kyle does what he does with Straton, but what he does very well. Congratulations on the 10-year anniversary of the brand. I have no doubt there will be many more 70s style chronographs over the next decade as well. So there you have it. Well done for making it to the end of the video. Why not check out another couple of Kyle's offerings, either here or here. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you again in the next one.